In 1999, an album came out that would forever change the course of my personal musical and creative and eventually professional journey. Now, I didn't know this at the time because I didn't even discover this album or even the band that created it until 2005. By that time, I was a 15-year-old, mushroom haired, aspiring guitarist of questionable fashion sense, enrolled in a summer semester at Berklee College of Music. Early on in this summer program, I called my next door neighbor in the dorms on his cell phone, and on his ringback tone, remember those? I heard this. That's Overture 1928, the first instrumental track off Dream Theater's seminal 1999 concept album, Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory. It's a 3-minute, 37-second musical tour de force that, like all the best overtures, from Tchaikovsky to Gilbert and Sullivan to Broadway, seamlessly integrates and blends all of the main musical themes of the pieces to come, while still standing on its own as an immense and catchy musical statement. It remains, to this day, my all-time favorite Dream Theater song, and I think that even without any lyrics, it probably most immediately encapsulates for me what Dream Theater's music is all about. As it played over the tiny, tinny little speakers of my mid-2000s flip phone, that 30-second clip of Overture 1928 built for me a gateway into an album, sure, but more importantly, into a band that very soon would come to open up new chapters and new ways of thinking in my mind about what was possible, not only in terms of musical achievement and prowess on an instrument, but also in the pursuits of genre blending and bending, musical storytelling, and just straight up badass musicianship. There were soaring ballads reminiscent of the best of Pink Floyd, and progressions, rhythms, and sounds that were called Yes and Rush. There were the unstoppable riffs and aggressive metal stylings of Metallica, the musical theater inclinations of Queen, and I heard that same willingness to move through genres that I'd first fallen in love with as a kid on albums like Sgt. Pepper and Wish You Were Here, turned up to 11. But mostly what I heard was the combination of all of these elements, coalescing over the course of a 77-minute album into something completely its own. A sound that makes it very clear why Dream Theater stands essentially alone at the top of a genre you could call progressive metal. The sound that I first heard that day at Berklee on my friend's cell phone can only really be called one thing: Dream Theater. And Dream Theater's Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory, is absolutely on my list of pandemic survival albums. Now, I could sit here alone on camera and talk about this album for a good long while, go through track by track and tell you everything I love. But I thought it would be more fun to welcome two friends of mine who are eminently more qualified to talk about this album in great detail than I am. So it is my great honor to introduce two of the masterminds behind Scenes from a Memory, John Petrucci and Jordan Rudess.
Hey, what's up, Cooper?
How's it going, man?
Thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to have you on the debut episode here of Pandemic Survival Albums, Episode 1. I thought it was fitting to have you guys on, not only because Scenes from Memory is one of my all-time favorite albums, but also you guys have what looks like is going to be an incredible DVD coming out very soon, where half of the set was playing scenes all the way through. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like just to revisit that album 20 years later, live, around the country, around the world.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, we have to get a couple of things out of the way. First of all, congratulations on your first episode.
Oh, thank you.
And thanks for having us. The other thing we should get out of the way is our relationship, how it started, and actually how you were integral to, in my case, presenting scenes live. At the time back then, I was doing a lot of different effects and stuff on the guitar, and in order to recreate that live, it took some powerful programming. And so you were the man on the Axe Effects mission to get all like the cool stereo panning stuff on Beyond This Life and harmonies and all this stuff. So I want to thank you for all that. So because of your work, our presentation of the album was even more accurate.
It was fun to dig into all of that. I mean, this album is so complex. Everything you're doing back in '99 on that first tour, all of the different gear that had to get pulled together just to pull off those tones. And Jordan, I know you're much the same way.
Yeah, I mean, to do scenes for me was like, first thing I thought of was, wow, when's the last time we played this? And what instrument did I play it on? Because there's all this data, all the sounds I made. So once I locate that and translate it all to whatever I'm playing now, then I kind of feel like, okay, this is good. But what's cool about it is it gives me an opportunity to update it and say, well, okay, well, I did that then. What can I do now that would be, still paying tribute to the album, sounds that people want to hear, but maybe even a little better.
You mentioned the live DVD, Distant Memories, our Live in London DVD coming out. We played this, this presentation is 20 years later, and it's a lot, way more produced than the original tour that happened back when the album first came out. Back then, I frankly didn't have really the tools to do exactly what I did on the album. So I did kind of variations and stuff like that to further emphasize, the work that you did. All the special effects that are on the album, I was able to recreate in real time live, and it was being triggered by MIDI. It was way more advanced presentation, and it was actually really, really accurate to what happened on the record, because there's some complex effects going on with envelope filters and panning and things, and in this case, the Axe effects was really crucial, being so powerful to be able to do that.
It's fun to go back, to have the latest technology and to go back and actually be able to kind of up the game and do it, even better, higher sound quality and being more true to the album.
Having seen a couple of the scenes shows on this tour and, obviously working on it in pre-production, there was something amazing about seeing that in all of its glory being related very much the same way that it is in the album, but then also with that crowd element and just the energy that comes from that. I mean, it must have been a trip to play those songs and pull off that whole piece as an entire musical statement night to night.
It was. It really was. It was a lot of fun. As you said, you came to a few of the shows. We all thought it was cool for a couple of reasons. One was that for fans that have been, with us all this time, that were around when Scenes came out back in '99 and saw that tour, this was kind of a reliving of that experience, but a 2.0 version of it. The people that were there previously may remember the way that we presented it in our production. I mean, we didn't have the means really to present it the way that we really wanted to, because we were fans of like big concept album tours, Queensryche, Roger Waters, Scenes back in '99, 2000 with some TVs on.
Very different period of our career.
Fast forward to the version that's on the Distant Memories DVD, and you see, full stage set.
Wayne's video,
that Wayne Joyner did.
Right.
He told the whole story in graphic novel form and all these different things that we just weren't able to do back in '99, 2000, but also for new fans that discovered Dream Theater after that period and didn't have a chance to see Scenes live. This was an opportunity for us to play and present this, really cool story concept album live to new fans and have, who never experienced that before. And so, it was really, really fun to play and present it that way.
As I said in the intro, this was the first Dream Theater music I ever heard, because obviously there's such amazing work before this, and at that point there was also stuff that had happened after Scenes. It was an interesting period to come in, especially Jordan, in relation to you, which is why I'm so thrilled to have you on. I mean, it was your first album with the band. You guys had just done Liquid Tension. What was it like to come in on an album that was building off of themes from, a demo track that had been made, I guess 3 years earlier, but then there was this new ground to explore from having taken a 20-minute song and saying, we're going to make a whole album out of it?
It was so exciting, first of all, coming in from LTE. It was, I didn't know what I was really walking into, even though I had been part of Liquid Tension and worked with John and worked with Mike. Walking in and having, instead of a tall, bald bass player, having an Asian guy with long hair, I thought it might be the same thing, but really the parameters were, quite different. And also the guys did have a bunch of themes that they were looking forward to working on. And I was just so jazzed and excited about coming in. And I remember coming in with like 50 different little, audio clips of ideas. And, it was just this whole like energy around the whole thing. I think the guys were, pretty excited about having somebody else come in with new, fresh ideas. So, I often think about the perspective I had coming into that album as kind of compared to what the guys were thinking, because to them, they had already had this, career. I was just like stepping in. So, it was a really, really exciting time. And I remember just, I literally, as if it was just like the other day, hearing the themes that they had that they wanted to play with and working on them and orchestrating and doing all this stuff. And the whole thing was, I of course couldn't compare it to working on a Dream Theater album before that. But when I look back at all the different albums, it was a really unique and very special time. And it was an amazing tour this past run because it was an anniversary tour for me. That's the one that I got started on. So it made this past, touring year just even more exciting. And it's cool to hear that was the first album that you heard, because when you heard that, you didn't know the other keyboard players. I think the timing of it was really, kind of meant to be. I mean, I don't want to speak for John, but, I think when I came in, it was kind of like he found a new kind of writing partner, to bounce ideas off of and compose in a different kind of way that we really kind of were excited about, and it helped to create what that album was. I think one of the reasons that I was asked to join the band was not even so much, well, of course, as a keyboardist, but also just as a creative person and a person into composition and orchestration, and all those factors helped to kind of come alive. And it was like our big spark, if you will, of that album, to find out what we could do together and to to make it happen.
With Jordan, we first started me and Mike Portnoy at the time first started working together with Jordan with Liquid Tension Experiment. And I discovered immediately that we just had this chemistry, this compositional chemistry. I mean, a song like State of Grace from the first Liquid Tension, I mean, we pretty much like improvised that. Like this stuff just came out. I was like, oh my God, this is so incredible. Like making music with this person. This is awesome. Like, and those albums were done very quickly and very effortlessly. And so that feeling, that creative chemistry that we had, we just wanted to bottle, then we did the second Liquid Tension, went the same way. And, just eventually Mike and I were like, you know what, this should be what Dream Theater is. And, we had a very difficult task of telling our then keyboard player, Derek Sherinian, that, we were going to move on, which is never easy to do. So that was a big moment for us. But we knew that bringing that creative and compositional chemistry and technical, level that Jordan had into Dream Theater would only be a good thing. But that, the record was really pivotal for us in so many ways. That's one of them, because it's a big band member change.
It was also your first self-produced album and first concept album. So,
we think about our career now and what we do and self-producing and everything that we do, it's just kind of normal. But back then, from all the different producers, whether it be Kevin Shirley or whoever it was, we had never just told the label at the time, we're going to do this on our own, leave us alone. It was a big move to get that across and to do it, to take it on. And it's also a big risk because we had never done it before. And then as a prog band, the idea of tackling a concept album for the first time, when there are albums like The Wall and Mindcrime and stuff, and Tommy out there is huge, because we're like, we don't want to come out with this. This is 10 years into our career. We don't want to come out with a concept album and have it be lame. We wanted to kind of
Had to be good.
Yeah, we wanted to live up to all our favorite albums. So
all those factors.
You take them all in. Yeah,
concept album, new keyboard player. It had to be good.
It had to be good. So, and it, I think returning to Bear Track Studio in Suffolk, New York, where we recorded Images and Words, was also crucial because we felt a lot of like comfort there, and it was a really cool vibe. And there were a lot of factors that created probably a good pressure, but there was definitely pressure. And the result, thankfully, is that it turned out to be one of our most beloved albums, in our catalog. That's what you jumped into for the first time. All that history and all that stuff. Probably as a 15-year-old didn't think about any of it.
One of the first things I wrote down was tension is positive. Jimmy Page talked so often about light and shade, and the tension between these kind of more demure moments and these more kind of bombastic moments. And on this album, there's a tension between the fact that music existed before in some forms, and then Jordan brought this fresh voice. There's the tension between kind of the very ballady moments and these absolutely incendiary lead parts and unisons and all of this incredible musicianship at this high level of energy. What was the writing process around fleshing out these ideas?
Well, the first thing we had to do was we needed a thematic tie-in to Metropolis Part 1.
Right.
And, the funny thing, I've said this before, is at the time, when I wrote the lyrics to Metropolis, I just made it Part 1 because it was something that Rush did on their records. Something that Neil Peart did that I was a big fan of, because it made you like want to wonder what the next part was going to be. So there was no real plan as to what the Part 2 would ever be. It was just like one of those things, somewhere down the road we'll write Part 2. And
the pressure.
Right. So we put together kind of like a song, but the hard thing was how to, again, tie this into Metropolis Part 1, because the lyrics of that song have nothing to do with the story. They're completely arbitrary. And even as an existing song, they're very arbitrary. They're very like loosely written. I can't even tell you what I was thinking at the time when I wrote it. I don't know what I was thinking. So there was this real stretch to like, okay, well, the miracle and the sleeper will be tied in somehow.
You shouldn't be telling. People take this stuff very seriously.
Sometimes you gotta, you gotta lift the curtain. So a big part of it, like you said before, was in the writing process, was tying these themes in.
How the hell am I going to tie this in?
Yeah, and making them connect, and writing new music, writing like a song like Home or whatever, but also at the same time making sure we had reoccurring themes and melodies.
Safe in the light that surrounds me, free of the fear and the pain.
One of the ones I do remember writing, the opening guitar progression, that's very Pink Floyd-y. It felt kind of simple at the time, and it was almost like folky, but there's something cool about it. And it ended up not only being regression, but being the basis for The Spirit Carries On, which is one of my favorite songs from the record, and a lot of fans as well. Yeah. So the idea of balancing, we're doing a concept album, we have this new keyboard player that we just did these crazy Liquid Tension experiment instrumental stuff with, the music's going to be crazy. Right. Balancing that with, you have to have melody, theme, simplicity. It can't just be some crazy technical album. I remember that being like very thought out, and it's like, how do you go from Dance of Eternity to Spirit Carries On? It's so different, but made the album, I guess the song's pretty eclectic. It helped tell the story in a weird way by having all the songs have a different mood.
For sure. This story plays, at least in my mind, plays so well to Dream Theater's strengths. You say there was so much of it that was kind of trying to figure out how this is going to work, but in a really elegant way, these kind of, as I mentioned before, like light and shade moments, the story where there are these pensive moments where, we're trying to figure out what's going on in the past, but then you find out that what is happening in the past is some really kind of evil shit, and so it really lends its way very well to these explosive moments of playing, and the violent murder, and we've got the gambling and sex and all of these things musically those play really well. And
yeah, each song acted as a backdrop to kind of help propel the plot. You know, a song like Home had all this tension and darkness and stuff. It was a great opportunity to tell that part of the story. Whereas something like Spirit is so uplifting and beautiful, it was a great opportunity to tell that side of the story. So yeah, the music definitely set it was like the backdrop for the storyline.
So much of this album to me is driven by the classical piano that you're playing, and there's so many beautiful moments that kind of, especially in the transitions between songs, there's a lot of this movement between light and dark on the piano.
It was an interesting thing to kind of get into because, you know, all of a sudden the band kind of had this new musician who, you know, I come from a classical piano background, so I think the thinking was that, oh, you know, sometimes, oh, wow, like try expressing that on the piano. Some of these themes were, you know, pretty simple, catchy, if you will, themes that could be expressed in different ways than maybe you guys were even used to. So, you know, one of the things that I brought into the mix was this particular piano kind of styling that is all over scenes.
Those little in-between moments that you're talking about, those transitions help to make it sound like it was a continuing piece of music, you know, to tell a story. And sometimes the guitar did it, sometimes the piano did it.
But those natural instruments, those organic instruments, like the acoustic guitar, or the, you know, just are so like grounded and just feel so good and natural that I think that's part of the magic of that album. And also the other thing from my perspective is that, you know, although I'm a, you know, a synthesist keyboard player, my background is really, I come from, the piano is like my home. So when we return to that on anything we do, it's always almost a little bit of like an exhale, like it's a really natural way for me to express. So when I get that opportunity to express a melody like that, it always has a certain kind of feeling to it.
Yeah.
It seems to me on this album there's more acoustic guitar too, John, than maybe any other, at least featured. I mean, I know that you love to double track with acoustic, which creates such a huge sound, but there's more solo acoustic on this, it feels like, than any other Dream Theater album.
You know, as you're trying to tell a story, there has to be different moods set. You know, an acoustic will definitely set a very personal, intimate mood in that sense. So it was important to tell the story, like in the beginning with the, you know, the hypnotherapist. You know, the other elements that helped to kind of tie the songs together as far as transitions were the different spoken parts. You know, the things that we had Terry Brown recite as the hypnotherapist, and the different sound effects and things like that. If you listen to an album like The Wall or Mindcrime, and this stuff is like really essential to help tell the story. And that was a big element as well that we worked on.
It's so cinematic too, bringing in those elements.
The whole end of the album is just sound effects.
Right. You know, you talk about how you have to hit these marks on a concept album to have it be at the level of other concept albums, but also that restrictive format is also freeing it away for all these other elements and genres. And
who is this? Hey, we have a visitor. It's Cooper.
Say hello.
Hello.
Genius.
Cooper. Hello, Mike. How are you? Mike Mangini makes an appearance.
That's right.
Hearing all kinds of notes in my head. I think there's something wrong with me.
I heard you've been laying down some absolutely thunderous drum tracks in tandem with the writing. Congratulations on that.
Oh, behave.
Austin Powers. Very nice. I love it.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm trying. You know, we hit our instruments, we play notes, and we count things. That's what we do.
That's right.
Go have fun.
Very nice.
Mike's going to make a sandwich now.
That's
A
right.
sandwich.
mentioned earlier that you came into the band. At that point, it wouldn't have been on a cell phone, but you probably had, a DAT or a cassette of musical ideas. When a song like Dance of Eternity is being written, is that an opportunity to kind of bring in anything that you might have and kind of throw the kitchen sink at it and see what works to create these cool, different moments in a song like that?
Yeah, I mean, anytime we open up to that kind of very progressive space, it's an opportunity for me to kind of like chime in a big way, because, a lot of my musical life is spent kind of in that mode rather than more of a basic kind of more rock metal side. I mean, I'm really, coming from classical music, and then obviously coming from progressive rock, Gentle Giant, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, all the crazy stuff, and electronic music. So I welcome these opportunities where we almost exit like song form and we step away into more of uncharted territory, which is kind of like more of a Dance of Eternity, where it starts bringing in more classical influences, and it gets quirkier, and it gets, harmonically more challenging. So I remember, there's definitely parts of Dance of Eternity where I go into like some very kind of unusual, especially for like Dream Theater, harmonic mode. And, some of the looks I'll get from people in the band, like, what the hell is that? Like, what are you doing? But then again, it's a different kind of an offering. And sometimes everybody goes, yeah, that's different, but that's cool.
What sticks out to me most in Dance of Eternity is the kind of Joplin-esque ragtime section is such a fan favorite in there.
I mean, it's funny how people often comment on that. And what I learned from that, and the effect that seems to have had on everybody, is that in the middle of serious prog, when you're really going for it and it's all intense and meters and all this harmony, it's really good to have a little bit of levity, because it gives everybody a chance to breathe and have a smile. It's like so welcome. And I think that's why that kind of happened that way. The part came about because we were playing around with this kind of unison, heavier, low line. And, I'm just sitting there and my brain is always spinning with a million ideas. And sometimes I'll just, put my fingers in the keyboard and just let some of it out. And I just started just riffing on one of the, heavier riffs that we were doing. It was really a joke. It was to make the guy smile in the room. I didn't really think that anybody was going to take it seriously. But then, everybody laughed and went, I don't know who it was, but everybody said, oh my God, we should do that. And I was like, I'm new to this group. I'm like, okay, cool. So I'll throw in some ragtime music. So, so I did. And the riff comes from the heavier stuff that we were playing in unison. I just happened to put a ragtime accompaniment, which for me is, like a no-brainer to jump into something like that. But it's amazing how loved that really is. And I think it's because everything around it is very serious and proggy and metric and this and that. And all of a sudden we're in this, upbeat kind of fun ragtime mode.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what was that?
Right. And then, of course, I think some of that snuck into some LTE.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not a ragtime player, but, I certainly very stylistically kind of fluid and like entering different areas and, have fun with that kind of thing.
Sometimes those ideas, like they're literally presented as jokes, like to make somebody laugh, but it just takes a second to be like, wait, what are you doing there? And then you start to develop it. I mean, it's happening right now.
It happened.
It happened last night.
Yesterday we were in a Batman mode. I started up like we were playing this part. Music is so fun.
Elfman or Zimmer Batman?
A Zimmer.
Yeah.
Oh no, actually, the thing he's talking about is an old school Batman.
Right.
That's
the
true.
POW kind of thing.
That's
so
funny.
What's funny about music is that you're only a chord or a beat away from like making something stylistically so different. Like, if you're playing something in straight time and all of a sudden you swing it a little bit, the whole thing changes. Or if I play something with a brass sound or a vocal sound, we're in a whole different place. So, like yesterday we were doing, and this happens a lot. We'll play a riff and all of a sudden, we'll start going into like a Latin version of it.
Right.
Just because, we like having fun and we play different styles. And
It's the beauty of progressive music, right? Anything goes, kind of.
Anything goes.
Yeah.
That's the fun. Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
But it's a question of where to draw the line.
Right.
Players that I love, and obviously, you're on that list. And then I also think about, especially recently, given the untimely passing of Eddie Van Halen, which was just so unfortunate. But one of the things that people really concentrate on with guitarists is obviously, the flashiest parts of the playing, the most visually impressive parts of the playing. And with a player like Van Halen, that's the tapping. With a player like you, it's the speed. People talk about the speed so often. And for me, that always has been such an alluring part of your playing, but even more so, and the reason I bring up Van Halen is I've always kind of considered Eddie Van Halen to be the most underappreciated rhythm player of all time. And I also think that you're on that list of people that are so good at lead playing that often people forget about how impressive the rhythm playing is, not only from a technical standpoint, but just from like having that sense of what's appropriate for a song. Probably my all-time favorite rhythm Dream Theater song is Beyond This Life, because there's so much going on beneath those verses and it never takes away from the song. But then if you listen to the rhythm, that's an immensely complex rhythm part. How do you come about to write something like that? Is it written to what you envision the melody being, or is it written as a riff you're digging and then the melody becomes something that happens afterwards?
The actual riff, like the main riff that starts the song, I wrote that in an improvised solo spot in Japan one night.
Really?
Yeah, I just started playing it. I don't know if it was something I stumbled upon earlier in the day, or if I just did it on the spot. But I remember doing that in Japan one night. I had a solo spot. I'm like, I'm going to play this clean thing, and it was that line. I think for me, what drives that song is and we didn't really know this at the time, I guess, but it turned out to be one of, I would say, two very important songs on the record that help to drive the plot, like where there's a lot of lyrics.
Sure.
James is telling the story. There's like important details in the story. Fatal Tragedy is probably the other one. So because of that, there are so many sections in the song, and the music definitely came first before the lyrics and everything, but it just all worked out. And it's, in a cool way. But because there were so many sections, just as a guitar player, I wanted to just vary them and make them all different and cool. And, I don't know, I was just trying to be as interesting and creative as possible. The song is very eclectic. It has lots of twists and turns. So there's all different types of guitar playing on it, from clean to riffing to really fast technical stuff to bluesy stuff. So, that just helps make that song one of the more interesting guitar songs. And, you mentioned rhythm guitar playing, and I've said this before, the solos are just a small percentage of the playing. If you were actually to take a whole album's worth of music and string together the guitar solos, I don't know how long it would last for. It'd probably only be like 3-4 minutes. The whole rest of the album is rhythm.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like you got to have those chops together. That's like a stamina game live, having your hand in that position,
Up one. Yeah.
Up, just constantly for an hour or 75 minutes straight. That's a stamina game for sure on guitar. And then be able to jump from those moments to the leads and have the control and energy that you need, So I'm glad you like that one. It's definitely one of the more interesting guitar ones. It's also one of the ones that you and I worked on the effects I mentioned before. There's a lot of special effects, panning things, auto wah.
I would say probably 90% of the show is one preset, and then that one, and then I think Fatal Tragedy had to be different presets because they're so complex.
It also has some unisons that are just crazy.
That's kind of the first big JP unison that has become such a staple of y'all's playing together.
Yeah. Well, there was a whole section, that was very like that we kind of were influenced by Zappa and that whole style. So it was like the Zappa unison is one of the hardest things to play on guitar, and it goes by really fast. But then after that, there's more of a guitar-esque line that's just more linear, that's more alternate picking, but it's just the tempo of it that makes it hard. So those are moments. I mean, as a guitar player, as a keyboard player, when you're we're talking about live performance now. It's like you need to pace yourself. That song is a marathon, and those challenges that I'm talking about happen at the end of the song. So you got to be like, you have to have your reserves ready, by that point. But also have the sensitivity to play the more. There's lots of clean parts and things. Again, one of the more eclectic, interesting, busy, and the added element story-wise is that there's a ton of lyrical content. Really telling the story.
We spoke earlier about how The Spirit Carries On is, that's one of your favorites, but it's become, I think that's at this point as emblematic a Dream Theater song as Pull Me Under, or songs like Breaking All Illusions or Our New World, that have become these instant anthems kind of. And one of my favorite things about Spirit has been seeing you all kind of take the amazing Teresa and You duo from the album that comes a couple songs before and have that as an intro to Spirit, where you and Jordan play a piano and an acoustic lead. How has it been to have a song like that become such an anthem, and where has it taken you all as far as your musical journey in kind of exploring that space before the song starts as an introduction to something that is very much expected to be the same every night?
Just starting from the writing perspective and the album process, doing a song like that, which is very sort of straightforward, especially for a prog band. And, if you think about Beyond This Life and Dance of Eternity and all these crazy songs, playing a straight ahead, very Pink Floyd-y song just for the whole song, it doesn't really change, was one of those, I don't want to call it a risk, but it was something new for us. Like, is this going to work? Like, we knew that it worked in the grand scheme of the album, but it's like, how is this going to be perceived? Because it's very like folky and sing-songy, and
I totally remember.
Yeah.
A small confession: when John, who wrote the original chords for it, he showed it to me. I was like, oh man, like it's just so simple.
It's so
like,
simple.
Really?
Yeah,
like
so
can't come up with some like different changes.
Yeah.
And he was like, no man, this is cool. I was like, but the chords. I was like, it's just such simple chords.
Very simple chords.
And but he was like, I think this is going to work. And even back then, well, we had worked already together with Liquid Tetra, but I trusted him. I was like, you know what, my prog sensibilities are telling me to add, like,
right.
whatever, make it in 7/8, put in a half finished chord. But
yeah, like the stuff you mentioned before that Jordan brought to the table, like the classical influence and all that stuff, we kind of broke from that, for this song. But even your approach on it on piano is like just perfect. It goes, into this, the mood that Jordan set as he played there, he fit right in like in 2 seconds. So it's like that chameleon aspect is something that I respect a lot from all the guys. I mean, just to kind of go, okay, now we're going to do this kind of like folky song. Don't put on your metal guy cap, you know. But also the other element that Jordan brought in is some of his connections, because he was the one who brought in Teresa and the choir too.
Choir, right? It was my first opportunity to write for a gospel choir.
Yeah, and you made that connection, right? With the gospel choir.
Well, I used to work with Teresa in the Paul Winter concert.
Right. That was so cool, like seeing that whole thing come together.
Oh my God, it was awesome. All of a sudden, these gospel singers were arriving at the studio.
It was awesome.
Like amazing. Yeah.
So we took some chances and stuff, and you know, we knew also we were taking a page from the Pink Floyd book of concept albums, so we were careful there as well. You know, we didn't want to just make it sound like we were mimicking something that we heard before, but we took a page from their book for sure, and going that route with the choir and the, you know, Teresa soaring over it, but it ended up working out.
One of the things you learn from like writing a song like that and then seeing the reaction and feeling that is that, you know, you put something out there that at first is very like simple and basic, but then the production, you know, that you put into it and the kind of playing and musicianship that you put around this basically simple structure really can, you know, bring it to this high, powerful place.
Even lyrically, like for me, I was really proud of the lyrics in that song, because it kind of wrapped the story in a way that I thought really worked. But even the title, "The Spirit Carries On," when I wrote that, I didn't really think it was strong enough. Like, I remember Mike being like, "That's so cool." Like, it sounded cliche to me. I'm like, "The Spirit Carries On." Like, I can't write that. Like, it seemed like, it just seemed very cliche. Yeah, it was a flag. Like, I don't know about that, you know? And Mike was like, "Oh no, that's cool. You know, I like that. The Spirit Carries On."
It's like not being afraid to be too simple.
Yes.
You know,
exactly.
We're playing just a beautiful melody or something like. I think that's, you know, I always say that's one of the things that, you know, Dream Theater is able to do that a lot of the prog metal bands just aren't comfortable with. You know, just expressing something really beautiful or something really simple, but we're not afraid of that. We embrace that. We love that.
But also, getting back to your question too, that moment, that guitar keyboard moment, was a lot of fun too. You know, that intro that we do every night. I remember, like, especially a couple of festivals where, you know, we're playing at night, the weather's perfect, and the wind's in your hair, and you just do that intro in front of a live crowd. It's really, really fun. Good moment to take a breather and have that sensitive, you know, part of the show.
As a fan and somebody who has had to, you know, really dig into the music on a professional level, that's so much of what they appreciate about Dream Theater and about you two's writing interaction is that there is that ability and that lack of fear to say, you know what, we're gonna go balls to the wall, we're gonna do something like Home, and we're gonna shine Lake of Fire with double track drop D and a ripping Kurzweil solo, but then we're gonna take a moment and have a gospel singer and play some really sensitive leads over beautiful intervallic classical piano, and we're okay with that. And that's gonna be not only on the same album, but in the same song. And I think the lack of fear is it's what makes it work. You have to commit to it in a way.
We definitely took a lot of chances with that album, and it's probably getting back to the start of this interview. It probably has a lot to do with everything that was on the line, all these changes that we talked about before, and really feeling like we got to put everything into this pot. This has to be the best stew we ever made. So, you know, we weren't afraid to take those chances.
I see echoes of this album in every effort you guys have had since, and like the building on the strength of it and the exploration. This album is so much, in so many ways, a blueprint for so many things that you've done since. It's an amazing album. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me a little bit about it. I would be remiss not to mention you all have a DVD coming out on the 27th that does have not only an absolutely awesome set from The Distance Over Time and other Dream Theater back catalogs, and then a second set of this amazing album all the way through. And I've heard some of the mixes; they are slamming. It's really, really great.
Awesome. Yeah. Looking forward to getting that out, especially that those were the last couple of shows we did in February before the pandemic hit. So that was good memories for us, distant memories at this point. But, you know, for those people that couldn't get to that show, like our friends in Asia and Australia, this would be a good opportunity.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of this.
Awesome, man.
You're
Very good.
welcome,
Happy to help.
man. And good to see you.
Everybody.
Thanks.
Hello.
Hey, hey.
What's happening?
How are you, man?
Good. We're just realizing we don't have really good lighting.
Yeah, we were like,
All right, we're making it happen.
okay.
I don't know if this is any better because we have that light behind
Well,
us.
that's
now.
going on.
Oh, it's fucking dark.
All right, so that light's not going off.
Can you hear me all right? Because my
Yeah, fine. How
my
about
Bluetooth, they don't seem to want to connect for some reason.
Yeah, we hear you fine. Yep, we have Jordan's hat shadow. How's that?
Nah, it looks cool actually. It's like a third person. It's like a it's like a shadow from the past. Very fitting with the album.
All right. Very good. All right, then we're ready to go.